You're watching Thoughts on Tech powered by Eastern Communications. Now in this podcast series, we are discussing cybersecurity. Especially now, with the booming digital economy, a lot of businesses are actually forced to put their business online. Question is, how do they protect their businesses from any form of cyber threats?
AI is a tool. So whether it's a friend or a foe depends on who uses it. So I suggest for everyone who's afraid of AI, use AI.
We are not saying that you will not be attacked. You will be. But the magic word there is that you should be resilient. If one of your services go down, you should be quick enough to get it back to service.
The truth is, no matter how small your business is, you need security. Whether physical security or cyber security. Security is still very important.
There will be threat actors always, but we need to adapt this because at the end of the day, we just want to use technology to better our lives.
I'm Jess De Los Santos and you're watching Thoughts on Tech powered by Eastern Communications. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Jess De Los Santos and thank you for joining us here on Thoughts on Tech powered by Eastern Communications. Now, for this 4-part podcast series, we are zeroing in on cybersecurity. With the booming digital landscape, it is but imperative that we Filipinos actually get to cyberproof our lives online. Now, bulk of that weight is going to fall on government. Question now is government keeping up with the changes in the cybersecurity world? Now, to answer that, we have with us DICT Undersecretary Jeffrey D. Yusek. Good day. Thank you for joining us.
Magandang araw sa lahat na nakikinig.
One thing that we have to look back on, by the way, is what you did back in 2017, 2018, around that time. You were still in private practice. You spoke during a convention and you actually had a bit of a gimmick during your talk. Tell us more about that.
Yeah, well, that was a gimmick. I wanted to show the public how easy it is to create a fake access point or a fake Wi-Fi. So I wanted to show the public how easy it is to do a fake Wi-Fi. In fact, I did it on my own in just about 30 minutes. And then I put it in the venue. And then I asked for their Facebook usernames and passwords. But don't worry, I already deleted the usernames and passwords. I just
You
wanted
haven't
to
gotten any special information from that?
No. But it's quite interesting because a lot of the attendees are actually cybersecurity professionals.
Right.
And cybersecurity practitioners. Diba? Parang nabiktima ka.
They didn't even have a clue? Or some of them had?
They didn't.
Yeah. Really now? So what insight did you get from that? I mean, looking at what you were telling us earlier, sometimes I would feel like, is it necessary for me to become a cybersecurity expert? I need to be at least know how to be an effective hacker as well. Well,
Not necessarily, but it works to your advantage if you know both the offensive and the defensive cybersecurity domains. A lot of the defensive domains kasi, if they focus on defense, nagiging vendor specific. Pag hindi nila alam how to offense. So I think you need a little bit of both to be an effective cybersecurity professional.
Yusek, all that narrative drives the point that was 2017, 2018. If it were that easy for you to do that back then, I'm sure hacking is easier to do now in 2024.
Oh, you said it very, very clearly, no, Jess? Hacking is a lot easier now. In fact, that's the problem exactly. The cost of offensive cybersecurity capabilities is less than the cost of defending. Imagine the disparity also from rural areas, diba? But they can do it. Even if you're far away from an area where there is robust telecommunications infrastructure.
Right.
Defenders would invest in a firewall, would invest in a XDR, would invest in whatever the top of the line encryption, and these usually cost millions of pesos, right? A hacker will just create a fake access point, which I did like 2017, and all it takes is one person out of the 10,000 employees in that particular organization to be fooled by the fake access point. And once they got in, the rest is as easy as jumping from that particular person's computer to the entire organization. So it's that easy. Or I'll just send an email. I'll just send like 500 emails. It just takes one person to click on that link, and the rest is as easy as connecting the dots. One thing that I would like to say is they're working as a team. Let's not talk about the cyber activists. Let's talk about the more organized one. Let's talk about ransomwares. Let's talk about state-sponsored attacks. Carefully crafted phishing emails. Do you know that they work as an industry?
How do you do your job exactly? If that's such a wide net.
Yes. So DICT is in charge of the policy framework. We know that DICT alone can't do it. So we have to have a whole of government approach. And that's what we did with the National Cybersecurity Plan 2028, which was approved by the President and issued as Executive Order 58 Series of 2024. What we did is we defined the organizational structure that will form convergence of all activities related to cybersecurity and cybercrime. For example, we have the National Cybersecurity Interagency Committee, chaired by the Executive Secretary, and the members of the committee are different undersecretaries and secretaries of the departments with a mandate to either police, apprehend, or technology like DOST, or cybersecurity and telecommunications infrastructures like NTC and DICT. This shows you that the entire government needs to act together. If the criminals, if our enemies are organized, we should too. And on top of that, we do international cooperation. We're now a member of the Counter Ransomware Initiative. We're now at par with other cybersecurity agencies in the world. Now we're sharing information with them, such that if an attack emanates from them, we can also tell them, can you please help us apprehend? Yes, it's difficult, but maybe consolably, it's because we're not alone.
Right. While it's comforting that you're not alone, I would like to think also that this is a very gargantuan task for you guys. I mean, you're dealing with wide networks here, but at least here in a local setting, how big of a problem are cybercrime incidents? I mean, how often do they happen and in what forms?
So cybercrime kasi is a huge gamut of things, no? Yung scamming, nawalan ka ng 500 pesos.
That's the normal idea of a
that's
cyber
normal.
threat.
Yeah,
for the
that's also
Filipino,
cybercrime.
Yeah.
And if you look at the PNP statistics, cybercrime did increase by approximately 200%. That's times 3.
Wait, what's the timeline?
From January to July.
Oh.
Compared to last year, same period. No? Pero, lumiit yung crime.
Okay,
The
what do you mean?
total crime statistics bumaba. What does that tell us? That tells us yung street criminals, nagtatransform na sila to cyber criminals. Kumukonti, for example, kumukonti yung snatcher, dumadami yung kumukuha sa e-wallet platforms. Biglang may natawag sa'yo at sabihin, can you send me a load?
Yeah.
Kasi kaboses ng kaibigan mo. So nagbago yung crime. But kami kasi, we don't touch that. That's CICC, there's a separate government agency there. Cybercrime Investigation Coordinating Center. And then PNP and NBI there. Kami naman, we deal with the larger stuff. State-sponsored attacks on government facilities, attacks on critical information infrastructures. When we say critical information infrastructures, these are infrastructures that are critical to the lives of the Filipino people.
Right.
Like attack on airports, attack on power, attack
Healthcare.
on water, healthcare, etc. So that's what we in the ICT are more focused on. Malaki yung gamot. Pero may good news naman dyan. We're
Which
improving.
What do you mean by improving?
I don't know if you've heard, no, the Global Cybersecurity Index of the United Nations had placed us in tier 2.
Tier 2, okay.
There are 5 tiers. Tier 1 is like Singapore, US, China. We're in tier 2.
Okay, so next
In 2020, we were in tier 3. So from a score of 77, we are now at 93.49.
Oh, that's a big improvement.
That's a big improvement. And we're 1.51 points
What brought
short.
us there?
That's because now we defined an organization nga. So at least mas maliwanag, how do you respond in operational terms, in real practical terms, when an attack happens? Kasi yun ang importante, it should be operational. Government must be able to respond. Hindi yung isipin mo pa, sino ba to? NBI, PNP?
Who do you tap?
Yeah. So ngayon maliwanag, it's the Computer Emergency Response Team who also reports under me in my office. And then we coordinate with the rest of the government agencies if necessary.
Okay, now, Yusek, I want to pick up on what you mentioned earlier about how the cyber criminals, in a way, are more after big business, or let's say they're getting more and more sophisticated in a way. That's the correct way to put it.
They're becoming ICT enabled, I guess.
ICT enabled. Okay, that's a good way of putting it. That also presupposes that the forms of attacks have also changed.
Correct.
But how so?
Dati, ginagamit landlines. Diba? And then actually, think of the past ito, SMS phishing. You receive text.
Yes.
Ngayon, iba na yung ginagamit. Ngayon, meron na silang
May
broadcast.
mga link pa yan.
May mga link pa.
Yeah.
Ngayon, do you know that they're not using SIM cards anymore?
So what are they using
They're
now?
using fake BTS stations or yung tinatawag nating IMSI catchers to broadcast without using SIM cards.
Really?
Yeah, it has a range of about 2 kilometers or 1
wow.
kilometer, depende kung malaki yung building like in Makati. They just do drive-bys and then they can sense how many mobile phones are in this area. Then they do a broadcast.
Ooh.
Also, they're now using Viber. They're using messengers, right?
Right. But have the objectives changed? I mean,
No.
it's still money.
It's still money. It's still fooling you. It's still trying to fool you into a sense of trust that you're talking to a real person, that you're talking to a friend. So ngayon, they're now using AI to mimic your voice.
That's been happening recently as of late. I know people
We call them robocalls.
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 Also, what I want to find out, Yusek, are some industries more vulnerable to cyber incidents compared to others?
Yes, an industry that includes money usually
Which
is
is basically
more.
every industry.
So that's usually banks
Okay.
and wallets and e-commerce. They are the most susceptible to attacks. Ang second is government. If I remember that right. So third is academia. So government followed by telecommunications companies and then academia. So yan yung palaging, most targeted. The other industries, wala ka namang masabing safe.
Right.
To be honest, sabi nga nila, there are only two types of organizations.
Which is?
The first one is you are being attacked or you've been attacked. And the other one is you don't know. So to say that you're not being attacked, I think you should think twice. Because baka hindi mo lang alam.
But how exactly do you cyberproof your organization? Because I mean, the primary fear or the primary concern would always be cost.
Cost, correct.
So how do you handle that?
That's a good question, Jess. A lot of us are fooled into a false sense of security by thinking that technological controls are sufficient, but no. Controls, in order to strengthen an organization's cybersecurity, 3 things must happen. Technological controls are there, yes, but there should also be policies that will reinforce or enforce those technological controls, including ingress and egress of people who has access to your data, etc. And third, but not the least, there should be people, the right people who will implement these controls. And also, you have to train your people not to be the weakest link. Kasi in most cases, the weakest link are your people as well. Tulad nga na sinasabi kong fake access points. Wala naman ako hinak sa kanila. Ang hinak ko lang, yung kanilang social thinking.
Thinking, yes.
That there was a free Wi-Fi here. No? So you need to train people.
In that whole ecosystem that you mentioned earlier, the 3 things, where are we the weakest?
People. It's not about, I'm not saying people really are, kasi people is simultaneously the strongest and the weakest. But right now we have to understand, and that's what the ICT is trying to work on, is that we really have a critical shortage of cybersecurity professionals. Not only in the government, but also in the private sector. And that's what we need to work on. And alam mo, when we first sat in the ICT 2022, there were like only 3 universities offering bachelor's or master's degrees in cybersecurity. Now there are more than 10, so we're happy. In just the span of 2.5 years, there are more than 10 universities offering that. I myself have to get my course
Further trainings and
or further
education,
training abroad.
Yeah.
Because during that time, back in 2017, 2018, there was none. There was none in the Philippines. And we need to improve that situation.
But is that enough? 10 institutions
No,
teaching
it's not. It's not. We need to produce approximately 300,000 by 2028.
by 2028. So that's more or less 4 years away. How do you handle that?
And so we need to improve the training. We need to improve the quality of the courses. And I think we're succeeding in that particular front. That's why we increased the global cybersecurity index score. No? And we have to promote work for cybersecurity professionals as well.
Right.
And we're happy to say that there's a lot of outsourced security operations centers now building their offices here in the country. So we're transitioning the outsource, the BPO, business process outsourcing, into an industry where you can also outsource security operations. Not only for the Filipinos, but also, that's where we're expert naman eh. We're outsourcing provider for the entire world.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Okay. That at least is would you consider that a long-term goal? By
Yes.
2020, it is a long-term
It
goal.
is a long-term goal.
Okay. Earlier we were talking about cost, but one other thing when these incidents happen, it's not only just the financials that are affected, but let's talk about that. How much do you lose in cases of cyber attacks? We're talking about financials, we're talking about timeline, and projects.
There was this research that in the banking industry, I have to check my figures out, but globally, the banking sector is approximately $1 trillion of direct costs. Okay, over the past 10 years, not counting indirect costs, which is some banks or corporations or financial institutions that have to close down because of reputational damage, irrecoverable reputational damage. So it is huge. At saka isa pa, marami rin hindi nag-report.
Yeah.
Diba? I mean, you have to be honest, Jess. If you lost 500 pesos in GCash, would you go to the
Let
police?
go ka na yan.
Diba? Kasi mas malaki mawawala sa'yo eh. Kapag ka mag-report ka pa. Siguro pag nawalan ka ng 50,000 pesos, then you'll report that, right? And that's where they play. That's where the cyber criminals play around. Yung 500 pesos, 1,000 pesos.
Pag pinagsama-sama mo yan.
Malaki yan. Malaki yan.
But more than that, Yusek, we're talking about the cost here. It's all about big business. I mean, a lot of these cyber crimes, a lot of these cyber incidents. So for a small business owner, some of them would think that I'm too insignificant for cyber criminals to even consider tapping into my network.
Well, let's put it this way, these cyber criminals are big criminals. I'll give you a very practical example of what happened. There was this shop, I won't name a name, I won't name that shop, who informed us saying that they received a ransomware demand. You know how much it was? It was
How
like something like 36 to 45,000 pesos.
Okay.
Because the amount of data was small.
Yeah.
Right? But that data was actually their sales from their POS.
Ooh.
So, tanungin kita, for the big industry of ransomware, which are usually international syndicates, you'd say, 45 pesos, that's small.
Malit.
Ikaw naman, as a small business owner, you would say, I really need that data. I need to report to BIR. I need to report to my boss about my sales. I need to know how much inventory I have. I'll just pay it. What's 45,000 pesos? It's like what? 2 days of your income,
sales,
of your sales, of your gross sales, right? So you'll pay for it. Ganun yung, that's how,
ganun mindset. That's how they
ganun
work.
yung nagiging mindset. So, ikaw naman, 45,000, mag-invest ba ako sa cyber? Pero ito yung hindi alam ng mga kababayan natin. Actually, you can use that portion of your 45,000 to secure, hindi mo naman kailangan i-secure lahat eh. Ano ba yung critical sa'yo? Halimbawa, you're a shop owner. Ang critical sa'yo, POS mo. Ilan lang naman ba ang POS sa isang 30-table restaurant, halimbawa, or 20-table restaurant? Right? 2 or 3 terminals? Secure that. Magkano lang yun? So, yun yung hindi nare-realize din natin. Security is not about securing everything. It's focusing your money to where it matters most.
Okay.
And that way, you can significantly lessen your cost of security.
But what I like about what you mentioned is that there are tools available that are cost-effective.
Yes.
Can you give us more concrete examples on that?
So, binigay ko na example, sa POS. Number one, kung maliit ka lang naman, ang kailangan mong gawin yung Wi-Fi access point mo, which usually you're providing either free Wi-Fi or Wi-Fi for your employees, secure that. As a firewall enabled for your Wi-Fi could cost you what? Like, I don't know, 25,000, 30,000 for a very small shop. And then, of course, buy XDRs, yung extended defense and response for your POS and other computers that handles your financials. That's it. And of course, you have to train your people.
Exactly.
Kasi whatever defense you have, if your people keeps, putting in a password that's called password 123, they ganun din yun, you're dead.
But let's dwell now on what government is doing exactly to really cyber-proof the whole nation, especially with the booming digital economy. What's the strategy?
So number one is we focus on critical information infrastructures. Same concept. So you're running a country, you have to focus your resources on what really matters. If power is affected, then the quality of life of Filipinos is significantly affected, including the economy. So we have to focus on protecting the critical information infrastructures. That's where we're focusing on. Number two, we have to get our acts together. There is still a lot of technologies out there that are made commercially available, but have been deprecated elsewhere. For example, we're talking to telecommunications providers on a timeline to deprecate or to start moving out of the technology that is below 3G. I know the telcos will say it's a huge investment for us. We have to replace our equipment, but we have to start that discussion now.
And how are they responding?
All they're responding positively, basta wag lang daw i-ask natin na tomorrow.
And agad-agad.
Agad-agad. We understand that. And that's how we partner with the private sector. We want to understand where you're having problems, and we'll help you improve and evolve into a better service.
Okay, I want to pick up on what you mentioned earlier. You're working on the national cybersecurity law. I remember this coming out, especially during some of the attacks that happened in some government agencies.
Sure.
I mean, one glaring point there is the fact that private entities, in fact, are not mandated to report to government.
Correct. There is no mandatory disclosure.
Why is that the case?
So that's a problem. So when a radar system goes down, we're not informed if it's a cybersecurity incident. When transmission lines gets a computer glitch, we get informed na, oh, by the way, we have a glitch. And then we start asking questions. Sabihin nila, don't worry, we're investigating. And I think that has to change. Ito yung sinasabi ko. That has to change. Alam nyo, ang ganda nung bagong BSP, financial sector cyber resiliency plan nila, which is a subset of the national cybersecurity plan. No? You know why? They're talking about real-time information sharing among banks. Such that when a bank gets attacked, and BSP knows how that attack progressed, inform mo na yung ibang banks. Para hindi na maulit yung issue. And minsan because of competition, they don't want to share. Sabi mo, tinamaan ako Pag tinamaan sila, di kanya-kanya tayo. But that's not how the world works. The only way we can reduce the cost of defense and be at par with the cost of offense is to work together. And we're working on mechanisms like mandatory disclosure na doon sa proposed law. And we're working on a security operations center where government agencies will be connected in real time. Right now, we have that. We have 30 government agencies connected to the DICT's Security Operations Center. And I'm proud to say that of the many government agencies that was hacked, mas mababa yung probability na mag-progress yung attack if you're connected to our SOC. Kasi we detect it faster.
Right. As should be the case. Okay, now one other thing is that we're also celebrating, or at least observing, Cybersecurity Month. How does a program like this one help? Huge. Number one, let's face it, ngayon lang naman past 2 years naging nasa consciousness ng Pilipino yung cybersecurity. So especially in a post-pandemic scenario.
And thank you for asking that. So I can also invite others to our activities. Meron kami Hack for Gov. Ito na yung sinasabi ko na maganda yung meron kang combination din ng offensive capabilities, no? So these are college students. And we're inviting college students to participate in Hack for Gov. It's a team of 4, and the winner gets sent to Thailand to compete in an international capture the flag competition. That's one. We also have I think the Binibining Filipinos will visit us in the ICT for our opening of the Cybersecurity Month. Do you know that the current Binibining Filipinos is a gamer? And is an advocate for cybersecurity. So in this particular case, beauty, brains, and gaming. So
that's an added boost.
I'm fan na niya ako ngayon. And then we also have a culminating activities sometime October 27. It will be in PICC. It will show you the entire government's. There will be an exhibit. Private sector will be there, and we'll showcase to the entire public what we're doing in cybersecurity. Of course, in between there are a series of trainings. Government officials and government sector, including the private sector, expect trainings. We'll be inviting you in the ICT.
Sure.
Yung staff ko nga yata parang sinabi, magtuturo din ako ng 2 subject.
Why not?
So.
Okay, now given all that, what's the vision here when it comes to bolstering cybersecurity in the Philippines? What's going to be the main goal?
The main goal is to be operationally capable of responding to cyber attacks and to build resilience. Notice the shift from defense to resilience. We are not saying that you will not be attacked. You will be. But the magic word there is that you should be resilient. If one of your services go down, you should be quick enough to get it back to service. You should have a redundancy such that when one was attacked, the other can take over. And again, the sharing of information in real operational matters, even among competitors, is imperative. And that's why we need that cybersecurity law. And I think the National Cybersecurity Plan is already in place for that. I'm happy to note that our current score in GCI, which is a huge leap from 77 to 93.49, we're 1.51 points of being in the top tier.
Yeah.
So I think the international community has recognized that we are making strides in cybersecurity. But you're right, we have to admit that this has to be operational. Kasi ako, I'm a fan of very, very operational, very practical plans. That's madaling sumulat na ito gawin mo eh. Pero we need to have what can be done on the ground. For example, vulnerability disclosure. Number 2, we need to inform the public of what are the secure Internet of Things devices that they can buy. I'm not saying don't buy them. I mean, for the poor, parang Christmas lights lang yan.
Yeah.
Diba? Sometimes you buy yung walang mark.
Yung walang sticker.
Yung walang sticker, di ba? Okay na yun. Pero tandaan mo, malaki risk mo na masunog yung Christmas tree mo dyan. At least we should inform the public. Or is this a secure platform Internet of Things? Or is this a secure router? Etc. Para naman gumanda rin yung buying awareness ng public about cybersecurity products.
Do you see that shift happening anytime soon?
Yes. Our plan was to make that particular concept operational by 2026. And the plan, we're progressing through it until 2028.
Okay, we're with you on that one. Thank you very much for your time today. Again, such insightful conversation here with you. Again, Yusek Jeffrey D. Thank you very much, Yusek.
Thanks, Jess. Thanks.